While signing our mortgage papers, my husband joked loudly, "She's just here to look pretty. She's not paying a dime." The bank officer awkwardly chuckled as my husband added, "Well, at least she's good for decorating." I laughed it off, but inside I felt sick, especially when he leaned over and whispered, "Better smile, or I might just add a clause kicking you out if you get fat." Iradit. My name's Dana, I'm 37, and I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I never thought I'd be the type to post a story like this. I always thought people who plotted revenge must have been cold or bitter. But I understand now. Sometimes you hit a breaking point, so clean it feels like a knife through glass. My husband Mark is, or was, the kind of man everyone else loves. Loud, charming, always with a beer in hand and a joke on his lips. He knew how to get people to laugh, especially when it was at my expense. The day we signed the mortgage papers should have been a big day, a proud moment. We'd worked for years to buy a house. Or at least I had. But when we sat in that bank office, and the loan officer slid the paperwork across the table, Mark leaned back in his chair and said something I'll never forget. "She's just here to look pretty. She's not paying a dime." He said it like it was the funniest thing in the world. The guy behind the desk gave one of those awkward chuckles, like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or call security. Mark wasn't done. "Well, at least she's good for decorating," he added, nudging me with his elbow like we were in on it together. I laughed. Quietly. I had to. But inside, something cracked. I wasn't surprised, but I was ashamed. Ashamed I'd let it get this far. Then he leaned toward me, close enough that only I could hear. His breath smelled like coffee and mint gum. "Better smile, or I might just add a clause kicking you out if you get fat." I looked at him and smiled wider, like a fool. Like someone used to swallowing humiliation. But inside, something turned to stone. And it didn't melt. Here's the part I've never told anyone. I met Mark 7 years ago, at an open house I was hosting. I'm a real estate agent. He came in loud and confident, wearing a dusty polo shirt and work boots, said he was there to check out the bones of the place for a friend. He flirted right away, made jokes about how I was too pretty to be smart, and I laughed like it was charming. I should have seen the red flags, but when you grow up around silence and absence like I did, loud men feel like safety. He chased me hard. Said I was classic, said he liked that I wasn't one of those high-maintenance types. I didn't have much to compare to. I thought the teasing was affection. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. The first time he made fun of my clothes in public, I told myself he was just joking. The first time he told me I was too sensitive, I believed him. The first time he pulled out his phone and showed his friends a picture of me in sweatpants and said, "Bet you didn't know I married this one." I laughed along. But later, I cried in the shower, so he wouldn't hear. After we got married, he changed in small ways, like turning a dial. I still had my job, and he liked to say we were equals, but everything had to go through him. If I wanted to buy a new laptop for work, he'd say, "Are you sure that's smart? I mean, you do make emotional purchases sometimes." That kind of thing. He took over our finances. Said he was better with money. I didn't argue. I'd grown up poor. I hated money fights. I was just glad we had some security. But over time, I realized I wasn't allowed to make any decisions at all. I wasn't allowed to say no. If I wanted to visit my sister in Ohio, he'd say, "Oh, so you're just going to leave me here?" If I went out with friends, I'd come home to silence or snide remarks. Eventually, I stopped going anywhere. It wasn't obvious abuse. He never hit me. He never screamed. He didn't have to. His control was calm, quiet, constant. What he didn't know was that I'd been quietly setting aside money for years. Little by little. My commission bonuses, cash tips, refunds. Any scrap I could hide. I made up stories about why I needed to move money. Tax stuff, I'd say. He never asked questions. He thought I was stupid with money, and I let him believe it. By the time we were house hunting, I had saved $37,000. I offered it to help with the down payment. Not because I needed credit, but because I thought it would make us feel like partners. He laughed and said, "Keep your little savings, babe. I got this.
So I did.
And I started watching more closely. The house we picked was beautiful, historic, but recently updated. It was perfect. He talked about it like it was his. He told friends, I got a hell of a deal on this place.
Not we. I.
That's when I started checking things. I found out he was setting up the property in a revocable trust, with himself as the sole trustee. I wasn't listed. I asked why. He said it was just for tax stuff and that I didn't need to worry about it. The bank loan was in both our names, but the deed itself?
Still unsigned.
That was his mistake. I took photos of every document. I started saving emails and texts. I hired a lawyer. A good one. A woman named Sheila. She listened to me like I mattered. She didn't treat me like a fool. Together, we started planning. Then, a few months after the move, I found the text. He'd left his iPad in the kitchen. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a recipe. I opened the browser, and a message popped up.
Corinne.
That was her name. They'd been talking for months. She sent pictures.
He sent some back.
Including one of me, sleeping, captioned, still putting up with this cow. They joked about how he'd kick me out once he finished moving the house into the trust. She called me a placeholder wife. He said I was useful for now. I put the iPad down and walked outside. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there until my hands stopped shaking. The next day, I made my move. I told Sheila everything. She was calm and clear. We'll file.
But we'll file smart, she said.
The goal was to make sure I got out safe. That meant moving fast before he locked the trust, before he sold the house, before he drained our accounts. Mark had no clue what was coming. That same week, I told him I was going to visit my mom in Georgia for a few days. I packed a small bag and left quietly. But I didn't go to Georgia. I stayed with a friend in Mount Pleasant, someone Mark didn't know well. Sheila filed the divorce papers on Friday. Included in them was a motion for exclusive occupancy of the house, based on emotional abuse, financial control, and infidelity. We had proof. The texts. The trust papers. The statements showing he was trying to hide ownership. It was enough. We served him on Monday morning. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard from our neighbor. Mark flipped out on the poor process server. Screamed loud enough to wake the block. He started calling me nonstop. First angry, then begging, then furious again. You think this place is yours? He said in one voicemail. You'll be out on your ass in a month. I'm not losing my house to a damn secretary. He always called me a secretary when he was angry. I'm a licensed real estate agent. But he liked to act like I worked the front desk at a dentist's office. That voicemail was gold. Sheila loved it. Then things got worse. He drained our joint checking account, down to $11. I expected that. I had already moved my paycheck deposit out 2 weeks earlier. But what I didn't expect was that he'd start threatening my clients. Somehow, he got the phone number of a woman I was working with, my biggest buyer of the year. He called her and said I was under investigation, and not to trust me. That almost broke me. But then something happened I didn't plan for. Sheila called me one afternoon with a tone I hadn't heard from her before. You're going to want to sit down, she said. Mark's being investigated. For something else. I thought it was a joke. But no, someone else had filed a complaint. Apparently, Mark had used a fake contractor's license to win jobs during the pandemic. He'd been working under a suspended license for over a year.
And now the state board was involved.
I didn't even have to lift a finger for that one. But I did make a phone call to the HOA president of our neighborhood. I told her, very calmly, that my husband was facing a fraud investigation and had been harassing me during a pending divorce. I emailed her the proof. A week later, a letter came to the house saying that the HOA would be reviewing his property improvements for possible code violations. The deck he bragged about? Not approved. The pool he started digging?
No permits.
His life started crumbling piece by piece. And all I had to do was sit back and let it fall. He tried to fight me in court. He came in acting like a victim, telling the judge I was trying to steal his house. Said I was a manipulator who pretended to be dumb while plotting to trap him. But the judge wasn't buying it. We had the texts, the finances, the trust paperwork showing he'd tried to hide assets, the photos of bruises on my arm from when he grabbed me too hard during a fight the month before. He said it was an accident. The photo said otherwise. I got temporary exclusive use of the house. He had to move out. That day, I came home and stood alone in the living room. The silence felt holy. The air was different. But I wasn't done yet. After he moved out, I thought the worst was over. But Mark wasn't the type to lose quietly. First, I started getting letters in the mail. Anonymous. Ugly handwriting. Stuff like, "Whores don't get happy endings." Or, "Fat and alone. Good luck selling yourself now." Sheila said it was likely him or someone close to him. Nothing direct enough to take to the police. Just poison slipped through the cracks. Then my tires were slashed. 3 of them, not 4. So insurance wouldn't cover it. That was a Mark move, petty, expensive, and just smart enough to hurt without getting caught. But I didn't respond. Not publicly. Instead, I started watching him. Remember those little lots I bought outside Somerville? I still owned the 7th one. The one I hadn't flipped. Well, turns out Corinne had a cousin who just happened to be trying to build a tiny home retreat in the area. I did some digging. Her name was on the LLC. The retreat was funded by a private loan from, you guessed it, Mark. So I reached out to the county zoning office. I asked about permits, about environmental studies, about anything a brand new tiny home business might need, but probably didn't have. 2 weeks later, the project was shut down for code violations. Turns out they built one of their units too close to a wetland area. That unit? Built on my land. They didn't even realize it. I filed a trespass complaint. They had to tear the whole thing down. I didn't even sue. I just made them eat the cost. Slowly. Legally. Corinne sent me a DM after that. "Enjoy your wins, psycho. You'll still die alone." I didn't answer. I screenshotted it though. Sent it to Sheila. She smiled and added it to our file. That same week, something else happened. A woman named Lacey showed up at my open house. Early 30s. Nervous. She waited until the end and asked if we could talk privately. Turns out she was Mark's ex. Not an ex-wife. Not even a girlfriend. Just someone he'd dated briefly 10 years ago. She'd seen my name on a listing and recognized it. She told me she'd left him after just 2 months, said he was too much. Controlling.
Mean.
She said something that gave me chills. He used to talk about owning women. Like it was normal. He'd say stuff like, "She stays because I let her." It was always about power. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was better now. We hugged. And I realized I wasn't alone. Not really. A few days later, Mark did something desperate. He filed an emergency motion to stop the divorce proceedings. Claimed I was mentally unstable. Said I had paranoid delusions and was fabricating abuse to gain property. But this time I was ready. I'd been seeing a therapist. I had records. I had testimony. I had proof of everything. The judge dismissed the motion within 10 minutes. But Mark? He lost it in court. He screamed at me. Called me a liar. Said I was ruining his life. The bailiff had to escort him out. That moment sealed everything. But I still wasn't done. After the court meltdown, Mark went quiet. Too quiet. He stopped texting. Stopped sending letters. For 3 full weeks, I heard nothing. I thought maybe he'd finally accepted it was over. But then I got a call from my bank. He had tried to refinance the mortgage using fake documents. Claimed he was the sole owner, using an old version of the deed, the one he never filed. The bank flagged it because it didn't match their current records. I sent them the divorce paperwork and the temporary occupancy order. They froze everything tied to his name. Then came the final hearing. I sat in court, dressed simple.
No makeup.
Just jeans and a soft sweater. I wanted the judge to see me as I really was. Not some vindictive wife or fragile victim, but a woman trying to take back her life. Mark came in looking hollow. He'd lost weight. His hair was longer. His lawyer looked tired. Corinne wasn't there. I won everything that day. The judge granted me sole ownership of the house. Not just temporary possession, permanent title. Mark had tried to hide it, manipulate it, and in the end, all that trickery backfired. The judge even commented, if Mr. Bowen had spent less time trying to cut his wife out and more time behaving like a partner, this might have ended differently. But the part that hit me the most was this. They gave me 70% of the marital assets. Because I had proof he committed fraud and attempted to shift ownership illegally, the court ruled it was a malicious breach of financial duty. He walked out with his truck, some tools, and a few $1,000 in his personal account. Everything else?
Gone.
I stood on the front porch the day the court documents arrived confirming the title transfer. It was mine, in my name only, but it didn't feel like victory. I looked around the empty living room. It still had the paint colors he picked, the couch I never liked, the dining table where he once joked about how women should be seen and not heard. It wasn't revenge that hit me hardest. It was regret. I wasted years. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. I tried to be nice when I should have said no. I let myself be small to keep someone else big. But not anymore. I repainted every room, sold the furniture, tore up the deck he built without permits. I started fresh. And the first thing I bought? A big, ugly chair. The one he used to say was too much for the space. It sits right by the window now, bold and bright. It doesn't match anything, but it's mine. Just like this house. Just like this life. And I don't smile because I'm told to anymore. I smile because I finally can.